Yes. All right, recording has started. So before I start officially, I would like to introduce you all, or maybe you would like to introduce yourself, Catherine and Yolanda, to our guests, and then I will introduce you the guests from the room, so we know
Thank you.
who is there. Please, Catherine, please.
Okay. Look, hello everyone. My name's Catherine Townsend. I'm ACT government architect and also a practitioner in the ACT. Thank you.
Yolanda, thanks.
Yes, good day. Joining from Cape Town. It's morning on my side. I've been, my first visit to Curtin was in 2019, actually a whole different world before the pandemic. I've been in higher education. I'm a qualified registered architect, and I was formerly at a large public university, and I've moved 3 years ago to a private higher education institution where we are starting out with new programs. So we in 2021 we participated in the Perth Urban Lab, the beginnings of the project. So I'm really excited to be part of this process and to hear what the others say.
Thanks, Yolanda. And may I ask, maybe we can start from Mirko and then John.
Can't hear anything.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
My name is Mirko. I'm assistant professor in architecture, design, and techniques and technology in Belgium, where I've been for 4 years. My areas of expertise are education and
and that was barely audible.
Audible, okay.
Barely.
I see if it works better this way. Not really. Okay. Maybe you can speak a bit louder because I.
Hello, my name is Jonathan Spear. I'm the executive director at the WA chapter of the Institute of Architects. I am very interested in the seeing the divergence between context between the built form and the urban form, and I'd like that to be a more holistic conversation.
Brett?
Rugosh, originally born in Southern Africa, but north of where you are, like Yolanda. I used to hold that in Cape Town. I came to Australia in 1980 and first graduated from architecture, worked here in London, and then came back to the Master of Urban Design at Sydney University under some of the lecturers from Oxford Brookes. Became the first person in Master of Urban Design in West Australia. Then I got a planning degree because planners dominate in Western Australia, which is changing. And I've been working various consultant firms, government, and also had Jonathan's role before I left that role about a year ago. So there's lots of experience, and I think I'm very finely spread. So I'm always looking at my colleagues for their expertise for application. Thanks.
Well, thank you all. I will now share the images and I will introduce myself once again. So I'm Francesco Mancini. Many of you know me already. I'm the Deputy Head of School of the School of Design and the Built Environment here at Curtin University. And together with a group of colleagues, I've been running this program for a few years. And I will try to tell you the story about the program, but also what is the theoretical and practical underpinning of this project and what we aim to do. Is a little bit more than an educational project, and we are very keen to hear from different voices your comments on where we're going and any advice you might have for us to improve and have more impact in the future. So I'd like to thank everyone for being here today. I know that for some of you it's been particularly challenging in terms of time zone, but everyone, of course, has been incredibly kind in joining us today. So I'm going to share screen now. I will try to keep my presentation, say 30 minutes time, and then there will be space for questions and more information if needed. Can you all see the presentation?
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. All right, so I would like to start by respectfully acknowledge the elders and custodians of the Whadjuk Noongar Nation, past and present, and their descendants and kin. Curtin University enjoys the privilege of being located in an area, the Bentley campus especially, of great cultural significance. And this particular premise where we are here today, 137 St. George's Terrace, next to 139, is also a very important premise that carries a lot of history and memories concerning the impact of colonization also that Noongar people suffered more than 1 century. We're definitely proud to honor the Noongar people, and we value this place of shared learning, and we have shared learning with representatives of Whadjuk Noongar Aboriginal communities also here during this program, and we aim to increase that participation and journey together. And we recognize the impacts of colonizations on Indigenous Australians, and we're committed to moving forward together in a spirit of mutual honor and respect. This program is a project that I have developed together with many contributors. My main partner is Associate Professor Tanya Glushets, who teaches with me in this program and at Curtin University. And we have been working with several colleagues from the architecture program, Praisa Zapanai, Justin Owen, and then external consultants who have been teaching with us specifically, Tristan Morgan, Daniel Giuffre, Raquel Tardin Coelho, and Sharon Morovan, amongst many. And with Francesca Perugia, who is now teaching in the Urban and Regional Planning course. And we have experimented with both Francesca and Praisa transferring this particular approach to learning and teaching and engagement in other areas, other subjects and disciplines. So I will try to tell you a bit more about the story of these experiential and integrated learning environments in architecture and planning. Well, just a little bit of a theory there. We have been always very much intrigued by the way we learn, and being design in general, a very creative but also practical and with impact on real life discipline. We've been keen to explore a bit more how do we materialize knowledge that goes also through experience. Our approach is really based on experiential learning. And so from experience to conceptualization to experimentation, we have been keen to understand better how we work individually and in groups to effectively utilize the material that we are exposed to and use experimentation and visualization and critique to progress with our work. So we did a bit of work in there, and we have tried to understand how do we interpret the notion of experience, and we found that this probably was a very comprehensive definition that we have used as a basis for shaping this program a few years ago. The definition of the program, the design of the program has been incremental, so there was a basic idea that developed over the years and has been implemented and enriched by further activities and projects, sort of components that we have inserted in the Perth Urban Research Lab, in what became after a few years the Perth Urban Research Lab. The notion of experience is extensive and encompasses not only the physical experience but also the environment in which activities and learning and exchange between people takes place. And of course, it's more complex than just the physical environment. So we refer to a notion that is a little bit more complex than that, and especially it is also a construction. So it is a construction between people and events and facts. It's not just a physical space. And we found that the notion of ecosystem, or if you like, an ecology, was very a very strong concept that we could utilize, and we were facilitated in that because teaching urban design was suggesting that we could use this idea of ecology. So we have taken the definition of ecology to shape the program in its content, but also in its structure, aiming to develop a sort of ecology that is a sort of a human ecology, if you like, that is involving not just students and teachers, but a wider community and different contribution from different disciplines, but also from different point of views. And I will get to that in a moment. The context. We decided to base this project in Perth for two reasons. Number one, Curtin is in Perth, but we saw an opportunity to use the city and its region, urban region, as a sort of a permanent lab, experimental lab. So with all the issues that Perth presents locally that have clearly a resonance or affinity with global problems, we took the opportunity to work with both industry and communities at large to reflect and experiment solutions or potential solutions for a number of issues that affect both the city and the region, but are actually very much common in many areas. And this kind of approach actually helped us to take the first steps in having joint experience with institutions. Yolanda mentioned the global studio that we ran in 2021. So we are quite confident that discussing themes around urban sustainability, sustainable development, and inclusion, and a sort of a social sustainability for the urban developments of the future is a good way to actually have a common ground to share with many stakeholders. In terms of approach to learning, we have always imagined a balance between an economic rationalism in the approach to design or practical and real life problems, and a contribution of theory of design and more speculative thinking, with the idea to merge or let interact more and more research and practice. We, as an institution, as representative of a higher education institution, we believe that is also the scope of universities, actually, to make one of the missions is to make this connection. But we also wanted to go beyond the learning design, beyond the classroom and beyond what is generally, timetabled and organized in a very clear structure for students to follow a predetermined pathway. Once again, this was inspired by the discipline that we teach, but it is also a model that is emerging, and we will get to that maybe at the conclusion of this presentation. We have developed these 4 principles that constitute the framework under which we operate. So a joint venture with industry and community. This was also facilitated by the fact that, at least this is my personal experience, I've been teaching in many programs in my country of origin and abroad. And here was especially easy in a way to reach out industry and community to consult and contact them for projects. Was an incredible fertile opportunity and environment that enabled us to shape and co-design learning experience together. And so we came with this idea to have a long-standing partnership with our industry collaborators from the inception of the project to the conclusion of the project and beyond. The second principle, the second pinning point is that the engagement with the physical space and place is absolutely critical to understand what's the impact that physical built environment has on people. So on the one hand, we work with industry and community, that is with people. On the other hand, we try to connect and match the outcome in terms of build form, in terms of physical space that is affecting us back. If you want, you can refer to Winston Churchill, classical quote. But I do believe that we do believe that this is real and it's a mutual impact, and it's part of the construction of the experience that we were discussing before. The third point is an incremental integration of traditional and advanced digital technology methods. And I'm saying this especially because we all know that we want to be advanced and we want to be at the forefront of what technology offers us in terms of analyzing data, discussing design options, and presenting and disseminating research outputs. But also, we start from the consideration that digital technology is not in substitution of the analog. The analog and the digital should coexist together because they offer different opportunities for learning, for thinking, and for producing absolutely valuable output. So the integration of those probably is the pathway that we have chosen. And this was, as I said, alongside the other two principles, is a valuable point of reference that we have also tested and discovered is very useful along the way. So these four principles effectively don't come top down. They were not designed at the table, but we're also coming from previous experience and reflection and consultation with many of our friends who supported this program. And the fourth one is really about collaborating. So we need to walk what we preach. So for us, collaboration, students' collaboration is critical. It is a pathway to success to face complex challenges. And when it comes to urban problems, definitely they are very complex, they are layered. So collaboration is at the core of what we do outside and within the classroom. In this context, as I said, we have approached Perth. I will not spend much time. There are very basic problems and issues that are very common in many cities and many urban regions. I just want to point out the attention on the right side of this slide, where progressively we have also found existing frameworks and models that could serve introducing and clarifying to ourselves and students and everyone involved the importance of the social sustainability on the one hand, the cultural sustainability that in particularly in Australia and Western Australia follows a specific pathway given the history that is behind the present state of our cultural and physical domain. So the reconciliation plan that both the city or the university have put in place and working with Indigenous Aboriginal advisors has been incredibly useful. And whenever we had a chance, we know that there is scarcity of experts and they're very busy in many important projects. But whenever we had a chance and whenever they could, they've been with us, and this has been an incredibly valuable support to our program. And then the sustainable goals as a way to think broader, not just think about Perth, but thinking about how what we do. This was probably the first step that invited us to think how to transfer this program, how to make it transferable, how to make it scalable. Also in cognitive disciplines that might not be directly related to architecture per se. The big inception from the standpoint of merging sort of speculative approach with a very real life context has been the opportunity to work with the Department of Planning, Landscape Heritage of Western Australia, which in 2019, exactly in those days when we were starting this program, was developing the 10 principles of good design on the base of the experience in Melbourne and in Victoria, but that is coming from the experience, the previous experience in United Kingdom. And at that time, the 10 principles were still in the draft mode, so we actually got the final draft before it became official, and we used it and we tested the 10 principles as a framework for the studio. And we also adopted the model of the design review panel, which we found was a very good way to move away from a sort of a final presentation that is celebrating the outcome, but does not interface, does not interact during the process. So we took the design review as a way to set up meetings, 2 meetings, interim meetings during the semester with our students as a formative review to actually discuss, get feedback, and we have also built on that, introducing more activities with our industry partners once we had them here. And again, I think I did the calculations over the years. We have accrued, I think just last year, we have accrued something like 250 hours of in-kind contribution in all the programs that we run, thanks to the participation of industry between preparation, participation in the reviews and in final reviews, in co-design. Incredible participation, really. I hope that this is becoming more and more the norm in working together, not just for us, but in general. So these are the 10 principles. You probably, you're all very familiar. I guess Yolanda has met those when we did the global studio. And it's interesting how these 10 principles effectively, they refer to the built environment, but they could also be applied elsewhere. But even in the built environment, they are quite multidisciplinary. And this actually led us to consider panels that had a great level of expertise in many fields. You have seen the list of partners in the previous slide. This model has been transferred into the unit structure. I will get to that in a moment. But I want to emphasize first the importance of being here. This is where we are here today, St. George Terrace. We have run this program for a few years here, and it's been a great opportunity to actually have the presence of industry in these workshops and reviews, but also an opportunity for the students to test a very different urban environment. Many of them are either living in suburbs and they rarely come to the city. They don't touch firsthand this. And if they come, they don't come with their eyes maybe of the designers who try to understand what is the value or the difference in value between the suburb and the city center, and what are the issues and why there is a sort of disconnect other than being very tall buildings versus one-story or two-story buildings. So this was really revealing, and we have taken that habit since to bring students here and compare the experience, not just to say this is better than this one, but to let them reflect through practical experience of place about the differences and what are the pros and the cons and what is offering, what each context is offering. During the years, we've been focusing more and more working with the city of Perth. These are a few examples of the areas that we've been studying. And as you can see, the scale of the project was very, very large, but also was a sort of a way to force the students to accept that they had to work in teams. I guess this was really a tactical move. We have normally classes that span between 20 and 40 students. So we always have teams working group where everyone is responsible for a particular component of the work. But this also helps us to understand better and better the city and accumulate sort of knowledge that we could transfer back and start use that knowledge also to engage further outside the classroom with the community. And I will get to that in a few minutes. The other aspect is that in a couple of occasions we've been more strategic about lines of infrastructure. The trackless tram in 2021 is an example of that. We use this theme because Curtin and the Sustainability Policy Institute had just delivered a very interesting report in terms of research about the adoption of the trackless tram. So we ask ourselves, what is the impact once this is adopted in Perth? And we selected a number of areas. And again, we engage with a number of councils in this kind, in this case, in particular with Canning and East Victoria Park and the City of Perth. And again, these produce a lot of interest and discussion about the outputs and the visualization. We believe that one of the point of strengths of our program is that when you go out and you have contact with communities, design demonstration, if you like, or visualization through design can be a very powerful tool to actually get in touch and engage with communities. And of course, we have also, in some cases, taken whenever possible, also an input. So this is a process that works two ways, right? So an input from the community itself. So in the case of the Midland Rail workshops, we have started by visiting the site. That year we actually held the studio in our Midland campus, so we were still based just next to the railway workshops. And we engage with the Council of the City of Swan and members of the community who live there to understand what could be the future of this particular area. Last but not least, this is actually a little bit moved, but that's all right. It was the riverfront in 2023, and engaging much more closely with environmental issues and what will happen to the foreshore of Perth in the next decades, and how to rethink in a more ecological sense also the unbuilt space. And this has been a great challenge actually for our architecture students, because in this case, the project was 80% unbuilt and 20% built. And so how to deal with a problem that you can't resolve just through the build form. And this is just one example of many where we have urged our students to think more holistically and engage with different expertise. Just in short, what we normally ask the course structure in two phases. The first phase that is analysis, that is definitely in teams and in groups, and a second phase that is responding to a problem via design. The research happens throughout. In the first place, by researching about a place and potential theories or speculative thoughts that can help organizing the strategy and the way you want to achieve certain goals. And then through the process of design, reflecting on these goals and how you can align your design to the goals that you want to achieve. And normally the goals are defined, but they're also open so that students can have their own input in building a sort of a return brief. And this return brief is also tested and verified with either the industry, the government offices, the local councils, the community, whoever is the partner at that time. So it's very interactive. Now, this is probably not for you to read it. It's just trust me with the colors. And I will just tell you that we run through this exercise to basically integrate the 10 design principles that you see here with the professional competencies. This part of this project is part of the Master of Architecture, so that's an accredited course, and we have to integrate that with the professional competencies. And so these cross-mapping help us to, and we have adapted these as long as the competencies have been modified in 2021. It was a way for us to keep our level of thinking very solidly grounded in real life, so that any speculation would be maybe challenging some of the norm, but would be very aware always the norm and good design practices as understood in the context of both professional practice and regulations like the state planning policy that is offering the 10 principles of good design. So this is just to tell that on this side you see what we offer our panels when they were coming to visit. They could annotate comments, but they were not marking. The right side of this rubric, where the marking occurs, was separated from that experience and was with us. Once the students used to submit, this is an example of calendars that show how integrated the activities. And you can see that this is 2022 and 2023. Over the past 2 years, we have also introduced another component that is an international workshop of 1 week intense that is happening in between the two formative reviews. So in blue here, the formative reviews, where they happen in week 4 and week 10 normally, or 11. And last year we had Mario Cucinella coming in. This year we hope to have West State. West State has already confirmed. OMA should be part of this exercise. And it is a way to make it global in-house. So we have experienced this program also going abroad. As a matter of fact, the first experience was in Italy in 2019 with the Politecnico di Milano, where we did a studio there with them on urban design, with industry and academics visiting there. But we have transferred this model back here, and we try to invite international guests, and we want to involve more and more the institutes to be part of this, because we believe that it's not just a learning and teaching exercise, can have a broader scope and a broader impact, which is what is the ethos really of the Perth Urban Research Lab. So this is just a very quick illustration of the 4 principles. What does it mean? So designing the briefs at Hustle, and was a great exercise in this case. We normally do that with the students when we can, or with a selection of students at least, and we bring them there and we discuss how to shape the project. Or this is at Mainland with the representatives of the council. As you can see, post-COVID, was a very interesting experience, very different than just working with a particular firm as a main partner for the project. This is with the architect of the city during the this is the trackless tram, I think, and it's interesting because the presentations the day was really shaped in different moments. So students present, they get the feedback during the presentation. You can see in this case Peter Newman also, who led the trackless tram research project, and then there is a phase in which there is a real discussion, which we then turn into an effective workshop that we run in the afternoon to follow up on the feedback. So students don't just get the feedback and they go home, but they actually interact more with industry and try to grasp and dive deep what that means and what are the options moving forward. And I think that our industry guests love that part because they have the chance to put their pencil on paper and discuss in a different way rather than just verbally. And this is part really of a thought strategy, try to offer more and more ways to engage and learn together. So not just through conventional ways of interacting, and actually sitting at the table this way has had a huge impact on our students' confidence, and I think that has enabled the partners to offer much more insights without being in the position of just being the critics of a particular work. And sometimes at the end of the session, we also sit down and have a chat and see how it goes, how it went, and what could be the good next level to achieve. So we also get a lot of feedback, me especially, every time, and I'm very happy to get that. And in particular, Peter Lee is very fond of giving me feedback anytime he can. But I think it's a great way for us to improve constantly and keep up with the evolution of the work, the evolution of the problems, and the practice itself. So here you can see Tanya Ring from the DPLH and Peter discussing with Francesca Perugia, and I think it's Jane Weatherall here from WID Studio. And again, all of these components, they're basically always there, but sometimes there are additional components. And in this case, Andrew Howe from Element invited our students for an afternoon in his office after the critique, and we had a social event that was absolutely non-academically driven, but somehow was still part of the conversation and was another way to interact and understand what's the philosophy of practices behind certain components that you might hear as a student during the presentation. But if you visit the studio, you have an opportunity to understand what's behind that. So it was a very good way to engage 360 with the practice. And of course, I mentioned this already, the engagement with the perceptual experience of the physical place that can take many forms. In this case, we're in Italy. You can see from the codes in Milan in January with a professor from the Politecnico, and try to understand very different grammars of spaces. Here we are at St. Peter, I guess, and scale and different impact. This is not about celebrating Western culture to core. As I said, we have engaged in many different ways with problems. It's a matter of giving exposure that can penetrate your body and mind in many different ways. Probably this is another one. I don't know. It's still walking around Perth in this case. And in my opinion, through our experience, we have always realized that, it's not about going visiting the biggest monument. The bigger the monument, the more you learn. It is about learning about the different forms of expression that in different times and in different contexts have come together and form this complex realm that is the city. The third element, and I think Yolanda probably will remember this, has been a further integration of technology into teaching. And again, the tools that we use can vary from time to time, but in the case of the Global Studio in 2021, we use a special board that is a sort of a Facebook that we have at Curtin. It's called Pinup, but it's actually a social bit, I think. And we also use phones to actually illustrate our colleagues from other regions, the urban space that we are investigating. We have attempted many ways to make this more seamless. I believe that technology has really a great power when it is seamlessly embedded in what we do. If it becomes an additional burden, if the learning curve is too high, that disrupts really the continuity flows and thoughts and conversations around the real scope of work that we do. But we have integrated a number of techniques, and one of those has been recording meetings. This is something that we have adopted after COVID. So students have access to, through Blackboard, that is the learning systems that we use to collaborate, and they can also meet online or in a hybrid mode, exactly as we do when they don't have the chance to meet, since they have to work in teams. And they can record their meetings. And we actually ask them to submit a logbook of these meetings to see how the teamwork is going. And if there is an issue, we can also intervene and support the team and the group. This is a strategy that we have put in place because working in teams can be challenging for an incredible number of reasons. It's not just a matter of personalities. There is life commitment, work commitment, people who are overseas. It's cultural differences. So it's important that we curate and we really support also this aspect of the work. And in some cases, technology, digital technology and software has also helped us to make that easier to utilize as a tool. So not only when we deliver the content, but also during the presentations. This is an example where we use iPad to actually sketch and discuss in class during the presentations. And all of these, once it's digital, can be stored and sent by email. So whoever is not present can access to that, and constitutes really not just the verbal conversation that you have in class, but is expanding and is helping students to have records of what's been discussed and reflect. The idea is that they can come back to the recording, they can come back to this material and reflect further and expand the work that they do in class. So it's really hybrid in that sense. Sometimes the software is also helping us to make students working together. We use this in urban rather than in complex buildings. I should mention that since 2020, when we joined with Parisa, and now myself, we have expanded the application of these principles to other design studios, complex buildings. So it's really at the scale of the building, but the principles are essentially the same. And then we have adopted, again, this particular software, which is Giraffe, that has the particular, well, it is a web base. So it enables teams to actually work on the same project together, even though they are not in the same room. We use this at a very basic level, but for us, the real gain is the experience and the learning experience the students have and the exchange that they have, even though they are not in the same room at that particular moment in time. Because we notice that if that doesn't happen at a certain moment in time, this can delay, cause a lot of hurdles afterwards. So if they have an opportunity to compare and discuss with this level of flexibility, it's incredibly helping the possibility for them to successfully complete the unit and also learning along the way with us at the same pace. And so the class can actually move at the same pace. It doesn't happen, of course, all the times because the software does not substitute the human component, but it is a tool that, in our view, has this great advantage, and also, enables to merge speculative thinking with some sort of analysis that is about practical outcomes in terms of what's the cost of the building, and other parameters. And it is also an initiation to data-driven design, which is another important component the students have to consider when they engage in professional practice. So it's really sort of a toolkit, or if you like, a sort of a color pad where you have all of these colors and you prefer painting and use them in the way you want, in a way. But we offer all of these tools to students in the first 4 or 5 weeks And last but not least, we ask them to work in teams and always come together to find sort of a consensus around the decisions that they make and inform them by using everyone's research to take one specific position. The assumption here is that if you want to help communities and groups, you need to understand what being a group is, and so you need to share some values and you need to share some responsibilities, starting with your own team when you study. And of course, we start from the point of view that to resolve complex problems today requires necessarily what we call a collective brain. So the first brain that we've seen at the beginning, it's not just an individual, but probably all of those operations can be delivered with a great training and a good understanding of each other and a certain level of empathy by a well-equipped team where you can build on the strengths of everyone. This is not well, for some reason is rotated. You don't have to read this. This is just an example of the logbook. I wanted to just show you how the students do that. So they have the dates of the meeting, what was discussed, action item, if the action was completed. And it's not essential that they complete all the actions. It's important that they record it. And if at the moment they have an issue, they come to us and we can have a meeting with us. Can be online, can be in person. We can meet separately different components of the team. We can understand what the problem is. Sometimes it exceeds academic matters, but it is important that we have a tool to monitor the situation and enable students to learn how to come along and resolve the problems when the problem is there. So all of this that I've told you has taken the form of the Perth Urban Research Lab, and I'm late with my presentation. I acknowledge that, so I will try to be quick about this part. The Perth Urban Research Lab tries to formalize all of this that was happening informally and underline a strategy, resources, and objectives in such a way that we can use all of these components or a number of these components depending on the project that we engage with. This is us. Who we are and what we do. We have what we call a steering committee, but it's more of a group of friends from the same school and from 2 or 3 different disciplines. So architecture, planning, and design at the moment. We are growing. We're now 8. And there will be possibly projects that will exceed the sphere of architecture per se in the future, but will be always focused on the city as a problem if you like, and an opportunity to investigate how people live together and what we can do to develop in a sustainable way. We offer also some research expertise. This can be part of our research portfolio, but it's very much based on what the students do. But the important part is that I guess we have tried to go beyond classroom. So sure, like in this case, we have still workshops that we have in the course of a normal studio, one-day workshops with lectures and then some testing, some discussions, some activities. But we have started to add to this other components. This is the inaugural workshop that we did in October 2022, once PURL was funded in the second part of 2021. And was an opportunity to showcase some years of work in the space of urban design and complex building design. But it was also an opportunity to call a number of guests from industry, from community, from government to discuss in general. And we used the development of Perth, sustainable Perth, and we just adopted the live, work, and play as a motto, as a provocation. But the other big part of this provocation was that through the exhibition of students' work, there was a number of problems that we had already investigated. So there was some visual material that they could trigger further reflection on that. So the idea is to involve students in this particular activity. We had also students who took the units, who were mentors at the workshop. So we keep going and we involve them also after the unit is completed. It's not just unit mark, great, good luck with your career. It is expanding in that sense. And actually it was very, very successful and very, very rewarding. It's very complex to put this events all together, especially because we're all very busy. But was actually a good outcome, and this triggered also the opportunity to have intense study workshops during the semester that are connected to the unit, but really an opportunity to learn in a different way at a different speed and focus on specific problems. And I think that this is a great way also to involve our cultural advisors, because it's very difficult for them to follow up in the long term because of the availability. It's really a practical problem that we have. But being there on a week and learning at their pace for a week. So you walk down together with them, you sit down, you have a yarning session, you reflect, you communicate a bit about yourself, you learn more about what they have to say, and sometimes they share personal stories, probably needs to be distinguished by the history. So there is all of this level of sensibility and interaction with them that is very different and happens in a very different way. And it's really eye-opening to many of our students and for us every time. So this is a format that we have used as a very successful way to add to the learning about place and people whenever we engage with the project. In some cases, that is the core problem that we study, like in this one. Sometimes it's just a component of the problem itself, like in the case of Langley Park. And this is just when Mario Cucinella came. It was interesting because he came here and our students introduced the problem to him. He didn't come to lecture us. And one of the reasons why I really appreciate what Mario did, he came here with the idea of learning, and he wanted to meet also, indigenous people. He wanted to learn about the place. He didn't come with the idea that he's, one of the top 5 firms in Italy and the first top 20 in Europe, and he works along 4 or 5 continents, and he's very successful, so he has something to teach. Yes, of course, he actually taught us a great lesson, but he came very humble. And he immediately reversed the situation, and we organized this presentation where students presented, and then he was then critiquing or returning what was his understanding of the city. I think that his contribution has been really as an expert designer, and as he's a teacher. He runs his own master as an apprenticeship program in MCA. But the great part was that he really acted as a catalyst. So thanks to a number of experiences that Perth organized that week. So we are trying to replicate this year a public lecture, another specific communication by the director of research and development of the studio about sustainability. Laurie, who was with him for the whole week. And then specific presentations on what is sustainability in buildings. So there was a sort of communication that they were open to students and, of course, to general public. But then in the workshop, he really acted as a catalyst and helped the class to come together with a single vision for the whole area. That's an area that is like 50 hectares, if not more. So for a group of students to actually combine their ideas and decide what are the main moves was really a big challenge. And so he's been listening and then producing some diagrams, say maybe you want to go, you are going for this, and that, and then make your decision and back it up. That was the message. But it was a great, because the students really worked together. I think you were there, Brett, when they presented back the outcome. And for me, it's been a great outcome, because this is the very first time or the second time where we come with a diagram that is effectively a single diagram that works for the whole class. And this has given me an opportunity to reflect on what we can do with this model when insert these particular intense modes of participation, very open, but also very intense. You can build an incredible sense of collaboration and humbleness in the whole group. And you really grasp the fundamental values in which everyone believes. And in this class, we had students from 15 different countries. So for me, one diagram with 40 students in 15 countries is a success. Then the project, of course, might have further elements for improvement. But there was I think we all learned a lot, and that's why we want to replicate this as part of the Perth Urban Research Lab. Thank you very much. Oh, no, there's no need. Let me stop. I'm trying to get back to my screen where I can, yeah. Okay, we can see you now, so you are back on the big screen. All right, I think that if you want, I can stop the recording here and you can give me your feedback off records, but I'm more than happy to take questions and any comment. One of the challenges for us was to tell the story in 10 pages because this is a program that we have been building in a way as we progress with that. And we had a basic idea in mind, and we wanted to offer a very diverse experience to students. One of the things that I didn't mention, but for decades now in the space of teaching and learning, there's been a lot of research and reflection upon the fact that higher education providers are going to be in a very different space in a few years because there are many emerging non-traditional providers of education. And the world has changed, so going to a lecture, we all know, and then having 2 hours class is a model that is at least too rigid in many ways. But the way in which students learn is absolutely different from what used to be a few decades. So to engage students and to expose them to learning, we need to maximize the time we have available. It's not just about having more or less time, it's about offering opportunities to learn in different ways around a particular problem, and there is a lot of cascade effects that comes with that. And the other part is that university, in a way or another, must partner with, in my view, is 3 legs: is industry and community, is the government, and is the university. This way, we can have a solid tripod on which we can build very successful programs. Because on the one hand, we need to think of job readiness. I don't like much that experience. That term. I prefer to think of lifelong skills that give you flexibility and agility. And you need to be able to synthesize a multiplicity of voices. And there is no more friendly way that I have found other than actually gather people around the table and talk about it. The information is out there, the knowledge is out there, very difficult to distill, because internet is an ocean with a forest on top of it, and it can be a desert at the same time. So it's very difficult to find your compass and navigate through this, especially if the magnetic field changes every time. So I mean, it's really difficult to find points of references there. So we have to counteract that, not deny it. We have to accept it, but we have to work with that framework, relying on the most substantial, I think, stable element, which is our ability to come together as a group, as a society, as a community. And from different angles, you can attack the same problem and get different perspectives. And I think this is the best way to give more chances to students to grasp at least some of it. If this is done in an engaging way without being too boring, or I tend to be too intense, probably you noticed from this presentation, especially up front when we start the program. But I do believe also in seeding things that might come back in people's mind maybe after a while. That is more difficult to measure as an impact. But telling all of these in 10 pages was a bit of a challenge. So we need to be very attentive to what we focus our attention on. But the idea is to communicate to the panel that this is not just a unit that we do, has the potential to be adopted as a model, but even more importantly, the entire program can become a way of thinking about at least design-based education. I stop here. I know that I've been super long, but I'm really keen to hear what you want to comment on. Please, Brett, you want to break the ice?
I just think it's fantastic. It was interesting because when I started out, you were talking a few years ago when we first met about what you intended to do. And this is fantastic. the Australian Urban Design Research Centre, based in Perth, does bring people in. And when I did my course, it was Oxford Brookes, which was very inclusive, and they brought people in. So I thought, but you seem to be very clear on that. You had a very clear view about how you deliver it, and I think it's been exceptional how you have delivered it, and the rigour, and you talked about the complexity and how you've managed all the complexity. So for me, it's interesting because so much is done so well. The brief and the development of the brief, the assessment of the context, almost like an understanding of where you have to work and working around that very carefully. And then also talking about how you actually go about working out what you value, and then even the logbook saying, okay, let's set the tasks and evaluate. So actually I got to the point where it's only just dawned on me right at this moment, is that in a way you put around it a really good project management framework where every step is clearly defined. It's not just left to chance, and yet within that there's this magic that occurs. And I'm going to put you on the spot here, and it's going to sound like a strange question, but how do you teach design? Because I've been looking at I did the project management framework, PMBOK book of project management, and I saw all this stuff about how you work up the structure around process and make sure the content's there and the attributes, but they never actually talk about in project management how people design. And I know you're teaching that, so I'm interested in how, because the work you're producing, the work the students are producing under you is exceptional.
Thanks, Brad. This makes me confident that the program can survive or can expand and grow regardless of whoever is at the helm. And I think that we got also a couple of examples where other colleagues have adopted a very close model, the same, maybe a little bit more simplified and work pretty well. In terms of teaching design, well, the design is hidden here and there. So we actually deliver on that by setting the problem very, very clearly, organizing a number of resources that we discuss in class. So every time we have a session, of course, I have been talking about the special moments of the unit, and they constitute to 1/3 to 40% of the time that we have available. Another 10% of the time actually goes, now that you make me think in terms of project management, I'm thinking of how much time we spend on that. 10% of the time, 1 week, 1 week and a half, we spend it by defining the problem. And then there's only a 40%. If you think about it in class, it's really not much considering that we have 6 hours a week. 40% is dedicated for students to come with work. We don't look at computer, at least for the first 6 or 8 weeks. We want to see prints, because on prints, then they can pin up, have peer review and our comment on top of that. And whenever there is the chance or the class really is in a position where they need a special contribution in terms of learning material or clarification on concepts, we have a repository of material that we can go and grasp that includes precedents. Students have to study precedents, but includes precedents, or we use the web very much to just have a flash, dive deep on a particular problem, especially through examples. But the students know, and they have to develop their research very thoroughly that encompasses some social sciences components, so about population and place, the layer cake that compose urban design, so social, physical, historical, and then specific to the project, what kind of urban domain you're trying to establish and what is the most appropriate there. That's why you have to understand how the city is operating in that particular precinct and what is the goal of the city. Precedents are key, but we try not to rely too much on that because we don't want them to copy. So it is super important that they come as soon as they can with their own ideas, and we can critique on that and build with them what are the options for the project. One thing that really helps is that both in complex and in urban, we ask for 3 options. So the team has to come with design options. And Alberti used to say, knowledge by comparison. In the 15th century. And we still stick with that because we believe that comparison it's a fundamental key. There is a paper that we are trying to use to explain how we actually take care of the design. I might actually be able to show you the diagram, but it's in essence says you have an assessment, you have generation, you have comparison, and then you make decisions. And then if you can close the loop and iterate this process, the design evolves. And every time that they close the loop, every 4 weeks, they close the loop before submitting the assessment, and that's the moment when they get the feedback from the panels. So in closing the loop, the panels is there, and if someone is going in a certain direction, there is an opportunity to discuss how to get back on track. After that, students have 2 more weeks to complete the design, and we normally offer, there is another session at least in which we meet again in class, and that's why I put the calendar there. It's a little bit difficult to decrypt the calendar if I don't give you this explanation. But in essence, the mechanism is really helpful in driving the way you can approach thinking. It's not telling you what to think, but what are the tools that you have in your hand at a certain moment in time. So in the first part is really the analysis, then there's the speculation, then the option, and then you finalize and produce. We are very much eager to see documentation of all of this process. And in the first years when we run this, not many groups could actually produce high quality or visually compelling outcomes, I should say. It was more about the process rather than the outcome. But I'm not really a great project manager. You would discover if you were working with me. Don't. But no, if you want me as a project manager, better not. But over the years, we have refined and streamlined and cut off everything that we felt was not critical. And actually, the quality of the outputs actually improved, especially after COVID. I use COVID, I don't know exactly why, to be honest, but in 2021, 2022, 2023, it's been impressive. When we did the trackless tram in 2021, in that case, we offered, each group of students had a different precinct. Sometimes they have all the same precinct and they can debate. This one was really much based on principles because everyone had a different precinct. Some were in the city, some were in East Peak Park, some were dealing with Canning, commercial center. So it was very different, but there was a lot of space for discussion and the quality that year was impressive. So I believe that we have been really careful in making sure that the students have these moments where they verify their ideas. And there is a basic support that is the learning material. The brief is hyper-curated. And when the learning material is not accessed or they don't know exactly where to go, we intervene. And during the peer review, we actually sketch and draw, not the solution, but principles and what they can look at. We pay a lot of attention to the basics. North, scale, contour lines. They are basic elements to read and speak about and write what you want to talk about. If you do not pay attention to that, it's a problem. Yes, Catherine.
Thank you. Suddenly, yes. That was a very full presentation. But look, I have to say you've addressed, I think, all my apprehensions. I was initially wondering what cohort of students you were presenting this to or engaging with, but I can see it's the master's students, and yes, because I'd imagine there's some basic principles of how to design that they've already got under their belt. So great to have that. And look, really, I've only got one or two questions, but my observations are around love that it's an incremental integration of the digital and the analog. I mean, we've been talking about remote learning for years, and I've been sitting on the fence waiting for some sort of analysis and substance, and Francesco, you've rocked up with the substance and the analysis, and I couldn't be more pleased. This is really interesting. I've noted your comments around that it's a scalable problem.
Yes.
I absolutely vote full support for the industry plus government plus community plus university. That's fabulous. Really appreciate your comment about City as an open air book. That's so on target. That's lovely. And your mechanisms for dealing with the individual as part of a group. I like how you've attended to that and got that balanced, and that you're teaching them to understand what it is to be part of a group. I mean, these are concepts which it's not until you realise that many students are missing those understandings. So I love that they've been articulated as a valuable outcome. I also appreciate very much that its quality as an educational process is around what you're saying in most recently around it being an iterative process. You know, that you've got hold points where the proposition is critiqued by the design review panel, and that they're taught how to get a project back on track. I mean, not everybody's a genius, you know, as they go out of the gate. So the ability to take on board a critique and to revise a proposition is, I mean, that's an incredibly valuable lessons in there. Look, my only question would be around, can you identify upfront cohorts who struggle with this format? Are there any?
Oh, well, there are. If not a full cohort, there are maybe groups within the cohort. To come back to your first point, which I think is critical, and that doesn't have there's no silver bullet. There is no perfect solution that can be replicated. Must be a way, the approach must be open and really reading in time the class and the room and adapt and intervene. Now, I'll try to translate this into practical actions that we take. Just to come back to your comment, it's true, they are master students, and so we're confident. The first time that I ran 2016, Justin Owen and I started this, and I said this when we got the university award, we came in ready for success. It was a disaster simply because we didn't realize that the cohort was diverse, and there was at least 1/3 of the cohort that would have benefited from a very, very different approach. That was the first lesson that actually has triggered all of this thinking, a big failure, if you like, in that regard. And still today, we pay a lot of attention. You said, yes, it's master, but they come from many different cultural backgrounds. So their way of approaching architecture, some of them have an incredible high-level technical education. They can design anything, but the level of speculative thinking or maybe scaling up from the building to the city it's a phenomenal challenge. Some of them are great executors, especially some Asian students from some regions. They just ask, tell me what to do, and I'll do it.
Yep.
And we have to find a way to, bring them on a different pathway without telling them effectively what to do exactly. That's a master apprentice model that is incredibly rooted in the culture still today. So first and foremost, no, your question is still valid. We always pay attention to what is the dynamic in the first weeks, and normally we respond by offering different tools and we guide students in a slightly different way, at least for a few weeks. Because so just to give you an example, they have design skills, but they can be very different. So sometimes they do not have enough time to browse all the resources that we have there. So the next level for me will be, and I'm already working on this one, especially for building, for complex buildings, building a sort of a guide that is a summary of 3 or 4 documents that are there. The students can have at end, and this guide can guide them to dive deep in the different sections that we put on Blackboard. And again, sometimes it's a matter of time, sometimes it's a matter of different skills. But I've always been very, very keen when we design studios, and I tell my colleagues, we don't have to tick off the 100. You know, the 90s, the best we can do is not to ruin their potential. The 50s, those are the ones we need to focus. And if we do a good job, they will get 65 this year and maybe further on if there is an opportunity. So I think it's really the mindset where you focus your attention, where the bar is. And for me, is between the 50 onward, and those who are below. This is just as a side, is a general problem. The students' well-being is impacted. 1 of 4 today have extensions, they have special plans, they have the accord just stated that we have to have a support, a structure of support that is university-wide, and it must be absolutely substantial. We have some elements in place, and sometimes these students disappear in the last 4 or 5 weeks. It's very difficult for them to catch up. So at the moment, the only resource we have is sort of a further assessment. But we have put in place also other strategies. After COVID, I moved my consultation time that is assigned to me for online meetings. So if the student wants, they can come, and normally, or they can join online. And normally I meet with more than 1 student at a time if they have questions. And then if someone wants to have a follow-up one-on-one, we can do that at the end of the meeting. But I think that in that regard, staying approachable and making sure that they have an opportunity to regain contact is even more critical than giving them specific, technical tools or instruments to progress. Students have the capacity to learn. That's out of question. It's a matter of making space in their mind and in the context. Of course, we deal with academic matters, but it's a matter of making that space, that mental space. That's what's happening with me. If I'm concerned about anything that is outside, my sphere of work, I know that I struggle being productive or responsive the same level I could if my mind is clean. So I try to learn from my own experience. But that question doesn't go away. You need to be attentive every iteration. We're not confident that we have resolved all the problems at all. It's an ongoing process, and solving the problem is to be attentive all the time. Yolanda, I think I'm concerned. Yolanda is one of my great mentors and also my best critics. So. Especially from the teaching that. So I'm just trying to prepare the question.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. No, that's a great compliment, by the way, I must say. The feeling is mutual. I really enjoyed the presentation, and I concur with what Catherine has said. My questions or comments are actually quite aligned with what Catherine has said, and I've made some notes, so perhaps I'll write down if I forget anything, and I know our time is limited. But I really feel that, this is an excellent immersive learning experience. A kind of a rhetorical question is really looking at your team. How do you manage the project? One would almost expect that you would need a dedicated project manager just to keep all the balls in the air at the same time. So that is a kind of a rhetorical question. I think what you're managing within your team is absolutely phenomenal. There are 2 things. So my one question relates to what Catherine has said in terms of how do you in your proposal in the document show, and you've answered most of that already. In your response to Catherine, is how do you explicitly show that you support a diverse body of students within this immersive learning experience, where you have a careful balance between giving students agency, so the freedom, but also a structure to map exactly those, expected competencies in accordance with the regulators. So it's such a fine balance, and so I think that is brilliant. A question. So two other questions. The one is how do you manage? I mean, this is not, I think, specific to this particular project, because it remains a project in architecture and urban design generally, is how in your assessments, considering that the students have a very, very close tie with industry, government, community, how do you promote risk taking in their work, but still getting them so that they're faced with real problems, and it's kind of work integrated, simulated. So yeah, I think I'll stop with that, and then perhaps I just have another question once you've responded.
Okay, so we have 3 questions, so I will try to. Okay, the first one, project management. When we started the PURL project in 2021, and I launched this idea at the end of one of these final presentations, we didn't have much support other than us academics working together with a project that was stemming in different collaborations. And that year that we did the trackless run, we were actually in 3 rooms and we occupied the whole building, and we had Complex, who was doing a building in one of the precincts. Urban was doing the 5 precincts, and planning was doing the trackless run in Fremantle. So that was, but it was a teamwork, and we pulled it off. PURL, the big bet has been to convince the university or the school at this time that this structure can be a hub that can support this integrated set of projects. And after 2 years in which we operate by $0, meaning that we had to apply for small grants from time to time according to the project, we have been granted this year a little bit of funding as a sort of recognition that what we're doing makes some sense. And with that, we've been able to secure additional funding. So last year, when we invited Mario Cucinella and we added all of these elements of internationalization, we got $15,000 from the city. We put another $10,000, and we resourced the project with $25,000, trying to make it also more and more accessible to a wider audience, not just the students embedded in the program. This year, we are relying on $40,000. With this little bit of money also came more support from school administration. So we have the school, we're very lucky because being in a new building that it's been designed also for showcasing for events. You should come and visit us, actually. That would be, and you too, perhaps, Catherine, whenever you are in Perth. It's a great building. It's a great asset. So we have now a person from administration that is in charge of events, mainly in the building, but even with these ones that are happening mainly in the city, we are getting now a bit of support and a little bit of project management that make me look much better than what I'm actually in reality when I deal with this kind of things. So there is an aspect of project management that we have dealt with in-house to achieve the proof of concept. And now we are moving to the next level, again, incrementally and growing and having a more sophisticated structure that taps into the admin resources of the school. But that is essential. I agree with you. So that's the first question. The second question, probably, number one, there is a certain level of social engineering that we have tested over time is in the way we form groups. So we now form them ex officio. And we look at the students' progression reports, and we look also at the cultural background. So we want to have diverse mix, and we want to have high achievers with lower achievers together. There are pros and cons in everything you do. So, but we prefer to get the grievance from the high achiever in the first 3 or 4 weeks, and then actually explain them that part of being high achiever means to be good leaders, and you don't come to choose your team all the times, and everyone has something to contribute, and it's your task also to discover that with our help. And in a way, this is paying back, and it's enabling us to not delegate, but having the groups that try to self-manage as much as they can. We're there to support specific situation of conflict or attrition. and then we intervene. And the logbook is the critical tool because it is a document that every member of the team actually can compile. So if there are discrepancies or different comments on different moments in different moments of the studio, we have a good element to discuss. We invite them. We can't force them, but we don't want to. We invite them to record their meetings. So they basically operate like a micro practice without knowing that. We don't tell them that because otherwise they would be scared. But it's really empowering them to have the tools in their hand. We have learned this from, the appeal processes. So normally we ask the students to come with the evidence and prove their point. And in a more constructive way, we tell them, look, if you use these tools, this will protect the well-being of the group. Believe it or not, but will protect the well-being of the whole group. So these are the two main key things. Probably there are others, and sometimes, and I think that having once you get to know the students, probably you can. We do some presentations ad hoc that are really addressing some issues that some students have, or we program a part of the session, and either me or one of my colleagues sit down with a particular group and dives deep into if the project is lacking or there is a specific academic component that needs to be curated, we do that. So we have, again, a set of tools, but there is not a recipe. Again, it depends on how the cohort respond. The strategy that we have put in place in the last 3 years since Midland, that they have to come with a common idea. In Midland was very big, so it worked halfway through, but last year worked really well. That's another way in which everyone can feel that they are participating. And of course, sometimes comments from students to students can be something that we have to moderate and mitigate. But in general, these are the 3-4 steps that we take that are embedded in the program that can support students. Your third question was about the speculative thinking. Now, I still remember, and I have Craig Smith here, who is a fantastic architect of the city. He's also been a teacher. I hope he never retires. That's all I can say. But in a couple of cases, he was the first one. When we introduced in complex, we said, okay, we pushed hard on building a high-rise in timber, or at least in hybrid structure. And his comment was, but you can't go over 10 or 12-story buildings. This was in 2023, and 2 months later, still in the same unit, it was announced that the tallest building in timber would be built in Perth. So we went back and say, well, now you have the evidence, but we will also want to think a little beyond what is possible. So it's really a huge boundary for the students, because they need to feel confident that they want to go beyond the limits to challenge a panel and say, this is what the norms say, but I'm actually going against the regulations because I think that this is a better project. So it doesn't happen all the time. And effectively, this is not a hyper speculative studios. I have run speculative studios, and I know that there is a difference in there, but still there is an opportunity to challenge. And I think that that's the key. So as long as we can guarantee that opportunity, I'm happy with the balance. But we also have to be cognizant that this program sits within a larger program, and there are other opportunities for students to be more speculative or to be, more theoretical in the approach. So we are cognizant of that. We can't cover everything. We don't want to. So I think that we are happy with this. If I had another chance and I can run a speculative studio from time to time, probably I would. But yeah, I think that's we are happy with that balance. I think I hope there were no more questions. Okay.
No, thank you so much. This is really excellent. Just one more thing, if I may. And I'm sure you've done this, but I would be really interested to see what your graduates say, now having run the project in total for around in the 5th year now, I think, how this multimodal approach has supported them in working in practices that are international and global and mediating between different modes and technologies.
So we do not have a very great, we don't have great tools to follow up on our graduates, but what we've done, I've reached a number of graduates now who are in practice, and we have exactly asked exactly this question, because we would like to hear from them if this was in any way useful. We have some students who did the unit with us last year or 2 years ago who are still studying with us, but they started working. They came back as mentors, so I believe that that is a sign that they appreciate the value, and they felt very comfortable in trying to give back to the new cohort. So that's the first sign. That is, I can interpret that way. But we have asked that question. We are very keen to know if this is really. Industry tells us that this is a great value. We would like to hear from them what's their experience. Yes, it's a great question.
Thank you.
Jonathan, yes.
We have in WA an excellent suite of planning instruments in state planning policy, and the 10 principles of design serve as the basis of design review. And I probably take it as a comment, I guess, but I was really pleased to see that that's been extrapolated to that larger scale of urban design. And I guess I want to know, does it hold just as well at that scale as it does at sort of a more individual architectural scale?
I would say it does. And I have to say that especially in 2019 and in 2020, when we started this program, we worked with Jeff Warren and with Tanya Ring and Janine Egan in setting this program for urban design. They had no concern whatsoever in employing what was still the final draft was still yet to be published. And apart from a couple of descriptions that seems to address more the notion of the building, but effectively are easily transferable to the urban domain, especially because when we deal with urban design, I feel myself very comfortable in dealing with multiple scales. So there is a component at some point in which the students use the building scale to actually demonstrate the urban design principles. I come from a background where, from the spoon to the city, but when you build a building, you actually build a piece of city or a piece of the place. It's not just about the building itself. So not only the interface, but the presence, the number of people that brings in the groups. So there are a number of principles of good design that we could effectively transfer easily at the level of urban design. Context, of course, but legibility, safety, you name sustainability. There are, especially if you interpret certain elements in terms, but sustainability even in the new code is very much broad. It's encompassing really in the new state planning policy about the code of apartments, for instance, or the mid-density. There is an ecological thinking behind it, clearly. And you can tell that the department and the Office of the Government Architect have worked together. And they were very pleased, actually, that we came with this idea, because Jeff was really of the opinion that I don't know how it works in ACT, Catherine, but here the Office of the Government Architect sits within the Department of Planning, even though it has its own autonomy, and actually we read this as a move of the government to actually say, we have to work together. We have to make sure that there are more bridges between these two important disciplines. And so we build on that. And I think that everyone has seen this as a success. Thanks for the question. But yeah, you're right. It started as a building quality, but can be easily transferred to different scales. Yes. Very much so. And this is also what makes us confident that there are professions that are not as structured as architecture. Then there is no accreditation, there is no registration in a number of design disciplines, but the framework could be transferred. If you think in terms of design thinking and you think in terms of goals, and we have found, if you look at the sustainable development goals, that many of these principles could be easily used for social studies or for design thinking. projects or designing different space, user-centric design, you name them. Graphic design, I discovered the word since we have Jolie Tay, who is a member of our group, and she's working with us. She's been working with us for a couple of years, and her insight is really incredible. So yes, I'm persuaded that it is transferable. Yes.
It's interesting comments about the global sustainability principles and lack applied everywhere. Because in the early days of the review, I met with Jeff and I said, look, there's a fundamental difference between the way we talk about design and the way we evaluate it. We talk about it in terms of its components, the physical part, the front entrance, the landscape, the built form, but then we evaluate it by these broad social principles. And I see this list and I see landscape and built form, which are not broad principles, they're components of the built environment. And then these things you use to evaluate in the same list. So I really encourage them not to try and get people to talk about the object by the principles. Prefer them to talk about, we've approached from this direction, we've got the gateway here and those sorts of things. So I've got, this is probably a broader comment more about going forward is not to be too religious about how we apply it. I go to a lot of design reviews and I sit there and we go, there's a problem with the height of the building, and we say, okay, legibility, there's a problem with the height of the building. Safety, there's a problem with the height of the building. Okay, I'd rather just say, there's a problem with the height of the building and it's affecting safety and legibility, and then move on. So I'd like to have a longer conversation with you, but I think the fact that we're now talking about design in planning in Western Australia is fantastic, and the way you've elevated it through your training is one of the great strengths, so well done.
Mirko, I think thank you for your patience.
No, all good. Thank you for the presentation. It was great. And I also went through the document that you sent and the feedback that you got from the panel. And probably I'll give you feedback from an educational point of view, because clearly your program is very structured. There's a lot in there. I think that's also your problem, in the sense that when you write the application, you need to have a selling point. And I think that you got several selling points, and interestingly, you presented them answering the questions more than writing them into the application, because you speak about enhancing the student's experience. And I think that would be a very good story to explain, because the application will be read by people who are not in our discipline. So they won't really understand urban design or architecture. So what they will be interested in is what is that you're doing as an educator that is of value for the students. So I think that probably your struggle will be shaping the applications to make it more applicable or more understandable for somebody outside the discipline, because we will understand what you're saying in terms of how you teach urban design. The thing is how you abstract and write application, not so much about teaching urban design, but about teaching in a different way that people can learn from your approach to teaching, so that it can be extrapolated and apply to different things. So I think that if you, when you restructure the application, think of how do you enhance the student's experience, and because also the things that you were saying about the incremental approach and all those tactics that you got in terms of engaging the students. I think that that's the story that would go into the application, because a lot of the reviewers, when you speak about urban plans, they won't have any idea what you're speaking about. So I think that that's where I think that you got a real challenge, because you're doing a lot of things and really extrapolating what is also the innovations, because I saw that this is also one of the comments that I gave you. Engagement with industry per se is not new, or the use of technology is not new. Workshop per se are not new. So it's how you package all things. And I think that you said that a couple of times, but I'm not sure that I saw in the application, about this idea of learning at different speed and learning at one pace, and give students a suite of different alternative things. I think that would be a very powerful story to tell in the application.
Yeah, to summarize your question, is really the selling points from a teaching and learning perspective. We had the great advantage that they're very much mirroring, and I'm doing this with my hands. I don't know if you can see me there, but they're mirroring what we're doing within the subject that we teach. But we have to be able to tell the story from the other side. So why we offer such a diverse set of learning experience and what we try to achieve with that and how we measure that, not each of them, but once coordinated and all together, they actually do the job. We are reshaping the criteria C about innovation against this point. So more than happy to send you the draft once we have done it. But I think you summarized many of the comments that we've seen, that we heard today about, the program is fantastic, but how can, be detached from the inherent discipline and be applied elsewhere. This is for us one of the tasks when we tell the story in the application. Thank you for the feedback. We will definitely focus on that. But yes, I think that the comments that came today helped me to reflect in how we address particular problems using a specific moment of the course or a specific experience. So we will definitely. I'm thinking to build a sort of a map. So speaking a bit more in the application, but then mapping what we do, the activities, and see this is trying to respond to this and this. We see how we get with the measurables, how we can confirm. Probably the measurables would be more holistic and less analytical in confirming what we do.
Jason, you decide what to do with it. Sometimes when you want those applications, it's good to start with a teaching philosophy, and that's the one that I didn't see. What is your pedagogy, which is behind it? Because if you start with that, then the application might get a little bit easier because you've got a perspective, a clear perspective that you can present. Yes,
Yolanda is confirming that mapping the students' learning journey is the way to go, and I think you're right. So in the new application, the application that I've sent you is the one from 2023 that we are massaging now, and this exercise is incredibly helpful to us. But the notion of experience, learning experience, and a few other things about constructing the experience and constructivism will be at the forefront of the application to explain where we started from. And of course, we need to give a bit of understanding. I think we will do that in the third paragraph in the innovation of what design is and how design per se can serve as a very innovative engine in many disciplines that we teach, not necessarily just in the space of humanity or design itself. So yes, these 2 points will be there. Thank you for highlighting that. Yep. I'm conscious of your time, but so you tell me whenever you want to, because we've been going on for much more than what I prevented, which makes me incredibly happy. And please, thank you very much for the time that you wanted to dedicate to this session. But if you have another round of questions, maybe Yolanda, I see you wanna say something. Just let me say that I'm more than happy to send you maybe the draft application when it's done. But what we would really like to receive from you is a comment against the 4 criteria, but feel free also to comment in general, and we will use that material in a constructive way. So if you think that there is something that we can improve, please, we are very eager to hear that, because one of the feedback or the workshops I've attended, and we tend not to do this. We tell the story, and every story of a success is also based on failures and rethinking. As a designers, we iterate continuously. So anything that can be a good milestone for us to reflect upon is absolutely welcome. So the 4 criteria, the 3 criteria you're supposed to address are just for you a reference, but feel free to provide the feedback that you think is valuable for you from your perspective. Yolanda?
Thank you. Yes, no, Francisco, I think what I sent through some, initial feedback, but obviously not based on this very rich conversation. So I think I'm happy to follow up from this session with, some more, perhaps once I've also given it more thought, questions and feedback. But I'm really happy that the material was covered thoroughly, and really excited about the next steps.
Thank you, Yolanda. Catherine, is there anything you want to add?
I'm just looking ahead to, after you've won the award, how I can get exposure to the University of Canberra here. So
thank you. Well, to be honest, it would be really great to start sharing this. We've done something similar in a different project that I've started, but it's a different model. But in a way, there is the same ethos. We put together this competition with Freedwood initially, and now we prefab house. And now it's become a national competition that is involving many universities across Australia, and we use that in another studio where students actually compete and get awards from Prefab House on a very specific design problem. And that has been another way to share, briefs and approach and pedagogical goals across the country, effectively. So. Personally, I believe that the real competition is outside universities. It shouldn't be within universities, and the real competition is with the problems that we face. It shouldn't be competition so much. I mean, there is a certain level of competition between people as long as it's healthy. That is fine, and it doesn't become conflict. But my opinion is really there is great space for everyone to share, and everyone can only gain out of this. So I'm very happy to see, and I take your comment with a pinch of salt. I'm very scaramantic as an Italian, so but thank you for saying that. Thank you. All right.
I just wanted to add to the point you make about looking outside. One of the things that stuck with me when we first met was you talked about wanting to improve the conversation in Perth. I think it was almost said quietly, I want to improve the conversation in Perth, because it could be taken as being that implying we don't have a conversation. But you hit the nail on the head. We don't have a conversation in Perth. I think the level of the work that's coming out of this actually needs an outlet more than just the exhibition, because this could seriously become part of a media conversation in Perth. So
I hope that this year, with the OMA coming, we plan to have an exhibition just after the event and at the town hall. So there will be an exhibition of the students' work, the workshop, just to give momentum. And so the idea to connect all of these set of steps is really in my mind. And I always said to everyone when we had roundtables, discussion of this kind, the university is also the perfect place, because we are here to research and to do academic work. So it's a neutral ground. There is no conflict, or at least every conflict is, there's a truce essentially when you come here. And there is an opportunity to have very robust and genuine conversations about how to go about problems. So we have this privilege as a university. We should actually take advantage of that big time. Coming to your point, probably Julian Bolleter and I meet once, twice a year, say we should do something together. It never happens because, of course, our pathway is very busy, and he's also very busy. But I'm glad what you said about the Audric. Audric does something different from us. And so this is one also of the reasons why we are very happy with the balance we have, Yolanda. Audric is a bit more speculative, and they, have this hyperbolic thinking, level of thinking that is very compelling, and look at the same problems that we look at, density, housing, but from a different angle. And it would be nice to have a sort of a parallel or a joint experience where the same problem is approached from a more balanced, say, practical point of view, if you want, a pragmatic point of view, and a more speculative point of view. So we spoke about this a couple of times, but we need to find the right opportunity. Yeah.
When we met the other day with the government architect, she was asking after this space. So it's fantastic. We can make those connections.
Oh, all right. Well, I'm planning to reach out to Emma as soon as I have the chance. Emma was the chair of our advisory board at architecture a few years ago, and she's a Curtin graduate. So I I have the privilege to write from the same Curtin account, but I know she's very busy, but I hope we can reach out and we can have that conversation. Absolutely. If there are no further questions or comments, I'm very eager to let you go and thank you 3 times for the time and the energy that you put in this exercise. This was very helpful to me and my team. So thank you. And this is actually the demonstration that what I believe is the best way to go, because by myself or within our team, probably we could not grasp what we're doing, as we do when we engage with all of you. And Yolanda has been partially involved. Brett is the only guest who comes regularly, but also having fresh eyes who have been looking at the program has been really helpful from different perspectives. So thank you very much for accepting the invite. Thank you. And I'll try not to bother you too much with more material or activities, so feel free. I was planning to post maybe a couple of students' examples because I'm not sure I did that. So you can have a look. And I'm always, very concerned about showing the students' quality of work because I think it's very high and kudos to them because they can achieve a lot in 16 weeks. But I don't want to push, it's like when you have accreditation and you show the 90s next to the 50s, hoping that the panel is actually well invited to consider the work in a different way. So I'm just conscious of that, but I'm happy to post one or two examples from each year so you see what was the outcome. And thank you very much. Our internal deadline is the end of month, and then the end of August, the whole package has to go out. So there is still a bit of time for you, but if you can close this exercise within next couple of weeks, that would be great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Catherine, it was a pleasure to meet you in online. I hope we can meet in person at some point.
Certainly do.
But I need to thank Caroline also for introducing me to you. And Yolanda, it was great to see you. We need to do something together again. And now that you can also be awake when we are awake, and we know that we have tested that many times, so we can do that. So thank you very much for being with us today. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Speak soon.
Bye.
All right. Bye. Okay, I'm stopping recording. Well, thank you.